Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here to talk to you guys about an incident that happened a few years ago. It's actually with a group that plays an online video game. It's called the Brokers Guild. Um, so why am I talking about it? First off, any other incident that I have privy and information to and stuff is protected by NDA. This is pretty much all I can talk about. By the way, I've got about 17 years of experience in managing IT teams in the financial services industry. I've managed security teams, system administrators, DBAs, and stuff. And currently, I'm managing a group of DevOps people. So this is pretty much how Thursday, October 19th of 2017 started out for me. Had my coffee, sat down, started going through my emails, got this message. Impending shit show today. What had happened was there's about 800 of us. We all participated in a Slack channel called Brokers Guild. And there was a group of people that were getting ready to basically expose us. So for a little background, to start off with, we all played this video game called Ingress. Ingress is played, it's an augmented reality game. It's played on your cell phone. It was Niantic's first really big hit game. Actually, I don't even think you can call it a hit. Not a lot of people played it, but it led to Pokemon Go and Harry Potter, which is how they make their money. We still play it. All three games basically revolve around the same concept. There are places of interest all around the world, and you go and you interact with them, and that's how you score points in the game. Ingress is unique because in Ingress, there's two factions or teams. One is called the Enlightened, represented by the green freaky eye thing. And the cool blue key, that's the Resistance. Those are the good guys. When you sign up, you gotta pick a team. And the players that join and play the game and stuff, they're called agents. And among everything, it ends up with this very spy versus spy sort of attitude. You end up, if you get really hooked into the game, you start building communities. You start trying to get intelligence on the other communities and stuff. And it's all around how you score and stuff in the game. So the biggest way you score is you capture those portals, places of interest, you capture them for your team, you link them to other ones, and if you form a triangle in Ingress, it creates a field. And the score for the field is dependent on the size of the triangle and the population that the triangle is covering. So as you can imagine, there's an awful lot of pressure for you to build big triangles that cover really populated areas. And those links can't cross. So a lot of effort goes into these operations, especially the ones that cover continents and countries and stuff like that. These operations will involve hundreds, if not thousands, of agents all around, clearing the lane and stuff. And the operations, they'll have a primary plan, they'll have backup plans. The backup plans will have backup plans. You got to imagine there's an awful lot of pressure. There's pressure for the people that are on the ground trying to throw the links, pressure for the people who are on the ground trying to clear the links. And there's pressure for the people who are sitting here behind their computer watching on Intel, just trying to make it all happen. It's expensive too. You got to pay for the gas. Time is money. You hike a mountaintop. You're seriously invested in that, and you are sitting up there on the peak, and you are waiting for somebody to clear a little kilometer-long link. And sometimes they don't. So the other big thing that happens in Ingress are anomalies. This is the Via Noir Chicago anomaly a few years ago. Anomalies are huge. In fact, anomalies are probably the only reason that I still play the game. Thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people get together, battle it out in one of these sites. And at the end of it, we end up with one faction winning and the other one losing. So for those of you in the back, I zoomed in. So there's me and Dallas and Tony, and we all flew in from Utah for this one in Chicago. So it's a great time. And part of the problem is that when you play Ingress and you start really playing in the fields where you're making the big ones, and you start doing the anomalies, you start making friends all around the world. And the challenge is that there's not a lot of opportunities to get together, and anomalies do that. So you get together, you have a couple beers, you go out, play the game. Hopefully you win. This one we did, by the way. So then going to talk a little bit about scrapers here. Scrapers are software programs that basically, you guys should be familiar. It's same as with any website. We collect the data and stuff out of it, organize it, display it in different ways and stuff. Scrapers and ingress are against the rules. They've been around since the very first day of ingress, probably. Originally, they were used to actually score little tiny mini anomalies, community-sized anomalies, and then people started finding other interesting things you could do with them. When you imagine it and stuff, you're trying to throw a link from California to Boston, and all along that way, somebody could throw a cross link. You're either got to have somebody that's going to be sitting there staring at the screen all day and all night, looking at every little inch along that way, looking to see whether or not there's something blocking it, or you end up writing a program to automate it. So a lot of people end up doing that. Another good example is at the anomalies and stuff, there are special weapons called viruses. ADAs and Jarvis are the names. And they're very powerful, but when you use them on a portal, the problem is that that portal is then immune to another virus for an hour. And so scrapers are used to actually keep track of when the portal was inoculated and how long it is until we can actually use another virus on it. So not all scrapers are considered really bad. So bovine ethology here. One of the problems with ingress is when you take a look at the scores, it really doesn't make any sense, especially with those big fields. You can throw a big field covers, a province or a state, and you can throw a bigger field over that field and you get a lower score. It almost seemed like magic and stuff. And so a group of players actually got together. They wrote this bovine ethology. The score is measured in what they call mind units or moos. And so that's the reason for the name bovine ethology. But what they did is they got together, they scraped together a whole bunch of data, they analyzed it, and they started to figure out exactly what all went into that scoring, Another guy named Thrakazog, he had a site, and Thrakazog was actually well known for collecting the data from anomalies and other large events, and then basically printing it back up again so that it was easier to understand. So NV.io is actually a collection of scripts and tools and stuff that are used for anomalies and putting together large fields. It actually ties back in with a whole bunch of the other scraper databases and stuff. So this right here is the Guardian badge. And if there's something that ingress agents know, it's drama. They create it like nobody else. And this badge is probably responsible for more drama than just about anything else in the game. In fact, if somebody could figure out a way to turn drama into electricity, we could probably replace fossil fuels with this badge. So it's the problem is that you earn this badge by owning a portal for 150 days. That's how you get it. And so pretty easy. Turned out to be a player versus player game after all. People you didn't like, you stalked them, you figured out exactly where their portals were, and you killed them before 150 days. And a lot of people didn't like that. It got worse when you incorporate scrapers, especially because the scrapers are technically illegal, because then if you kill a Guardian portal legitimately, everybody accuses you of scraping it, So right back to Thursday, October 19th, 2017. So what had happened was a member of the Brokers Guild he'd become disillusioned or something, and he had decided to hook up with a member of the other faction and provided them with a whole bunch of screenshots that showed everything that was going on in the Brokers Guild. Included every screenshot that showed who all the members of the Brokers Guild were, which chats they were in, a bunch of other stuff. He also provided them with screenshots of a tool called Riot. Riot was a big database, contained lots of information and stuff that had been scraped. Had a really easy to use user interface. I'm very proud of it. So with all that information and stuff, him and a bunch of his friends had gotten together and they decided that they were going to create a WordPress site. They were going to release all this information and they were going to release it in a way that made it look like the Brokers Guild did nothing but Guardian hunting, which isn't necessarily true. We'll admit there was a Guardian hunting channel, but a lot of the Brokers Guild was around anomaly organization, other big events and stuff like that. It was 800 people around the world. It was a great place in order to make, connections and make things happen. So that was the beginning of our incident. So first step in any incident response activity is preparation. This was all for fun, games, It was a toy. There was none. No preparation. A bunch of the things that we didn't necessarily do, we didn't have anybody identified from a legal standpoint who'd respond to requests. There was nobody that would manage PR and marketing. We didn't know exactly, in the event that data like this leaked out, who was actually responsible for hunting down and figuring out exactly what had happened. None of those roles were identified. This event actually gave me a newfound appreciation for the preparation steps in incident response. Before, I was always checking the boxes. You got it. Do we have somebody that's responsible for marketing? Yeah, we do. Do they know what they're doing? Do we have somebody responsible for legal? Do they know what they're doing? By and large, for the most of the IT steps and stuff, we had that stuff down. It was all this stuff that's around. And in the Brokers Guild, that was exactly the problem. It really didn't end up being a technical issue. It ended up being a PR and marketing issue, and then eventually a legal one. Identification is pretty easy. Fortunately, we had moles. Mentioned earlier that there's kind of an intelligence aspect to this game. We had moles that were inside this organization, Clean Ingress, and they were feeding us bits and pieces of information and stuff. And so we knew what they were planning on releasing, how they were planning on releasing, but we didn't actually have the data of what they were planning to release. So we get to containment pretty quickly. About the only thing that we could do, we had to shut down the Slack, had to turn off the tools. Couldn't afford to have this person who was providing them the screenshots who we didn't know who it was. Couldn't afford to have them digging through there and finding more dirt against us, especially because we didn't know at that point exactly what the narrative was going to be, exactly what the information was going to be that they were going to push out there. And more importantly, we didn't know how Niantic was going to react or how the other people in the user community were going to react. So that takes us to eradication. And this is where the fun begins. So the only thing that we can really do to eradicate it is we have to find out exactly who it is that's leaking this information, and we've got to kick them out of our systems. So we didn't have the information at first. I believe I mentioned that. We didn't have copies of the screenshots. We didn't know the exact text and stuff until they actually released this site later that day. The steps that we had taken in containment in order to minimize the footprint of what they could get access to in the future and stuff like that had alerted them to the fact that we actually had a mole that was inside their organization, and it drove them to actually release a little bit earlier than they were planning to. So this is the website. It's still up, brokersguild.wordpress.com. If you ever want to read a completely biased hit job against me and my friends, you're more than welcome to. So located on there was a list of everybody that had access to the Slack. They had gone through and meticulously typed in every single name out of those screenshots, made it so it was easy to search and stuff. User number 108 on that list. It was alphabetical, by the way. That's me, Boy Plankton. So their copy of the list that they didn't publish included information and stuff that we don't know exactly where they were getting it from, but it included like where you played and all sorts of stuff so that they could get back to people and have them look up your information. So the Brokers Guild did actually have interfaces tied into it with scrapers. There was 4 of them, and they identified in that release, they identified 3 of the 4. Radar, Riot, and Omnivore. They conspicuously left out enl.io. So once we had the screenshots, then we could start going through and actually going through the hard work of actually identifying who it was that had snapped the screenshots. So from the information that we had gotten, we knew everything about the cell phone. We knew the resolution of the screen. We knew the ratio. We knew that it was on a Verizon 4G network. Whoever it was played Clash of Clans. And they always had their alarm set. That actually worries me. I play Clash of Clans and I have my alarm set too. So on the desktop side, it was actually a really weird resolution, 1366 by 768. The Windows version appeared to be Windows 10, and the Chrome profile was named Evil. So lots of stuff to go off of there. None of it really helpful. We did try looking into things like isolating everybody that was using a Verizon cell phone to access Riot. Lots of people use Verizon cell phones. We also looked into people that used Chrome on Windows 10. lots of people use Chrome on Windows 10. There was also another problem with that. It turned out that the whistleblower wasn't actually using Windows 10, they were using Windows 8.1. So this was the screenshot of Riot that they published. So you can see there's an awful lot of information here. Some of it useful for Guardian hunting, some of it not. And they went through, and if this reminds you guys of the Mueller report, they were the ones that went through and redacted a bunch of the information, and they did it to try to protect the whistleblower. They knew that if we could identify what this screen was, we could get back to the whistleblower. And ironically, this is the screenshot they did the most, they redacted the most, and it is the screenshot that was used to actually get back to the whistleblower. So what do we have here? In the upper part of the screen, there's a green box. It's got that bit of information, but the important part is that it's a green box. It being a green box means that the agent whose profile was being displayed happened to be an enlightened agent. If it was a light blue box, it would have been a resistance agent. The next thing that we can see here, they had a Google Plus link on their profile in Ingress. They had linked their Google Plus profile to their Ingress profile, and Riot had captured that information. And then finally, they had a TTT of 78 seconds. One of the things they never talk about on the Clean Ingress release is what TTT stands for. It stands for time to train. And it happens to be the amount of time that was measured in between somebody creating an account and finishing their training steps. And the reason why that was there is it was there to help identify accounts that have been automatically created and automatically trained. If it was trained in an impossibly fast amount of time, there was a good chance that it was a robot or was an account that somebody was starting up just to go spoof things with, and all sorts of other stuff. So it was a really, really useful piece of information. So DBAs went and ran some queries. And turns out that that 78 seconds was actually really unique. Only 2 accounts had a TTT of 78 seconds. Only one of those accounts had ever had their profile reviewed in Riot. And only one Riot user had ever reviewed the profile in Riot. So congratulations, in the first 30 minutes, we've identified who the whistleblower is. Except a couple hours later, after we got done patting everybody on the back and stuff, realized that wasn't the case. DBAs didn't know the TTT field in the database was minutes, not seconds. So that rolled everything back, started the whole process over again. So there's a lot of confusion about how to properly convert the field. I don't know if you guys have ever converted things from a floating point value to an integer, but you lose a lot of precision. And so you have to understand the rounding rules of how it's going to be displayed on the screen in order to make that connection. This is all stuff that should have been done in the first place. Whoops. Yep. So we're back to square one. What do we know? It's an enlightened agent. That's about 50% of the users in the database. They've got a linked G+ profile. There's actually a lot of those. That doesn't do a whole lot to filter. And they've got a TTT of 78 seconds. For real this time. So once the DBAs had all that, they had everything figured out and stuff, that whittled it down to 75 possible agents that could be that profile. A lot more than 2. And unfortunately, the only thing that we had elsewhere to go off of to filter that down was those 2 lines over there on the right. We're looking for a time when those 75 agents, when they would have only owned 2 portals that had been captured on a Saturday within 10 days of having been captured. And the reason we know it's within 10 days is because we know the next badge is going to be on a Tuesday. And the only times that that would happen is for the bronze and the silver badges. So somebody noticed something and we got a little bit lucky. And this is important. Let me go back a slide real fast. That query there to look for that situation when there's only 2 portals that somebody could have owned in a 10-day window was going to be very, very expensive to run. It was going to be very expensive to run for each of those 75 agents. And we're talking weeks or months to complete that. And so people were not terribly thrilled about that. And they didn't even know where to start. But again, we got lucky. In this, it's hard to see. But if you look at all the other redactions, they're a lot blockier and they don't scribble as much as this one. And if you look at the bottom of that, right where the red curly brace is kind of pointing to, there's almost a little bit that's pointing out, that's jutting out from underneath it. And somebody had noticed that that meant that the second letter in there was probably an A, G, J, Q, or Y. Only 2 out of the 75 had a second letter of A, G, J, Q, or Y. And only one of them had ever captured 2 portals on a Saturday. That Saturday happened to be October 14th. Well, they had captured 2 portals many Saturdays. Only one of them had ever captured 2 portals on a Saturday and held them. That we were able to find that window where they only owned those 2 portals at a time. And that happened to be on October 14th, which was just a few days before the Brokers Guild, before the screenshots were taken and stuff. So now we know who the profile is, and we've got that information. So now we have to go back and we got to look at the access logs and stuff. Turns out that there was a few people and stuff that had seen that profile, but there's a couple other details that were actually in this screenshot. The menu options, there's only 55 agents out of everybody who had access to Riot, only 55 agents that had the roles that were necessary to have the exact same menus as the whistleblower would have had. Only 7 agents in the history of Riot had ever viewed that page, the one that we had identified as being that profile screen. Out of those 7 agents, only 2 of them were in that group of 55 agents that had the same roles to have those menus. And only one of those 2 agents had viewed the profile between October 14th and October 18th. So this is the timeline. We've actually identified the whistleblower at this point because of this. We know on October 14th, the portals were captured by the agent in the profile. We know on October 18th, the whistleblower logged into Riot. They visited the agent profile, and that is the point right there, October 18th, 13:39 and 19 seconds, when the screen would have looked exactly like that. A few hours later, another agent, likely a friend of the whistleblower, went and neutralized the other 2 portals. And then shortly thereafter, the whistleblower returned to Riot and verified that the screen no longer matched the screenshot that they had taken. So going back to the screenshots and stuff, we mentioned this before. The Windows version turned out to be not 10, but was really 8.1. And when we went through the whistleblower's Google Plus profile, they had published a whole lot of screenshots that actually matched both sets of these, the cell phone screenshots and the desktop screenshots. So here's an example of the desktop of the cell phone screenshots. So you can see right there, they match up at the top, same Verizon 4G logo. The clock is the same, the alarm is the same, and the screen size is the same. And then this is the desktop, and it's tough to see, but both of them have the evil for the name on the Chrome profile, which probably should have gotten masked. And that weird screen size is exactly the same, the 1366 by 768, if I remember right. So there was not a lot to recover here. The big problem that we had is that pretty much by about the time that we were figuring out the whistleblower and stuff, everything is already done. It was out in the public. There was a giant social media campaign that was being run to really, keep us out of doing this anymore. The tools, Radar and Riot and Omni had all been shut down. And then eventually we got to the point where the Niantic actually contacted the owners of the Slack, the people listed as the owners of the Slack, and sent them legal orders to never play the game again. So if and then they announced to people that those had been pushed out. wasn't actually a really great time. There was 800 of us that had our information and stuff pushed out there. People did things that they probably shouldn't have done. This is probably one of the worst. One of the Slack admins had their car window smashed in. Among the other things, there was websites created that actually doxed a few of the people on the list pretty heavily. Went into details about their family, their jobs, their home. We had one guy who we did a fundraiser for in order to buy him a security system because he was so worried. And then we had inside the game, you have the ability to submit new portals. And a lot of us ended up with portals being submitted of our homes called Brokers Guild headquarters. So it was actually a really nasty few months after that. So there wasn't anything really to recover. And for the most part, everything kind of fell apart. A lot of everybody kind of spread out, and you don't really see a whole lot of Brokers Guild people anymore. So it's kind of nasty. So let's go to lessons learned. Preparation is the key to rapid response. And I covered this at the very beginning. We were not prepared at all. Nobody had ever experienced, or nobody expected anything like this. Nobody expected that, first of all, that anybody was going to turn on us like that. Nobody expected that the way the community would react to it. Nobody expected the way Niantic would. And we didn't have anything in place to deal with that. And it was especially seen, especially when the DBA started going and pulling their queries, and you see that the 78-second TTL, we several hours are initially wasted because we didn't really even understand the data, So those redactions, they were effective in delaying the response. Not terribly effective, but they were effective. They slowed things down, and they served their purpose. They never served their purpose fully. We did figure out who the whistleblower was. We could have done more to segregate and segment everything to limit the blast radius. And this is a big one. Sticking 800 strangers in a Slack and then expecting them all to keep secrets is a mistake. It's difficult to have 3 people keep secrets, but to have 800, that's a big challenge. And to tie them in with all these sources of data and to give them the opportunity and stuff to use it, I don't necessarily think that was a mistake. But this is the challenge everybody always has going forward, is as they work on projects and stuff like this, do they make it a big group and have the potential of the information leaking out and having a big negative reaction more likely, but the information is in more people's hands and is more effective and people are able to get out there and use it better? Or do you keep it small and tight and controlled and you don't have as effective a use of that information? And you not only see that in video games, but you see that in industry and you see that in government and stuff. Figuring out the size of that pool of individuals who should have access to what is always a big part of the challenge. So this part is actually near and dear to my heart. If I ever end up working on any sort of project like this again, this is really important to me. The things that really helped us identify who the whistleblower was turned out to be little things that were on that screen, things that you wouldn't expect. You go back and you look at the green tint on the box was one thing. You look at the menus and you look at 2 different sets of menus, and you look at all that information, and there's a lot of ways that we could actually organize that. There's how many different shades of green could we have played with, and knowing that, we could have gone back instantly and found who it was if we did a different shade of green per individual. We could have formatted the menus according to the user so that there'd be a code in there, and then a lot of people have thought about other things like, can we slide in QR codes into the background? or other ways that we could actually figure that stuff out in order to just make it so that we know from those screenshots that this is the unique person and the time and the day that they are looking at this screen. If anybody out there is interested in being a whistleblower, I think it's important for y'all to understand you should take your own responsibility and redact your own information. 4 days after everything got released, we ended up getting access to the Clean Ingress chat room where they had actually planned all this. And in there, we made a few discoveries. First of all, that top image there is actually the screenshot. And you can see right here in that photo, does the URL have to be censored too? And should have been. Okay, we'll pass that along. That was the moment where they made that effort of scribbling out that name, but they didn't cover just enough of it so that actually saved us probably weeks in isolating who it was. And this goes back even more, this is more important, especially in this day and age where whistleblowers and stuff are becoming a bigger deal in government. When you look at the case of Reality Winner, what had happened to her happened just a few weeks or months before the whistleblower, before the Brokers Guild incident. Reality Winner was a contractor working for the U.S. government in intelligence, and she had printed out a whole bunch of documents, and she sent them off to a journalist, and the journalist published them. And they used a high enough resolution scanner when they created the PDFs that the government was able to arrest her later that day. And the way that they did it was they actually zoomed in and they could see the little hidden watermark on the printer, from the printer, that said what printer it was that had printed it, what day and time, and who it was who had issued the print job. And it's very, very similar sort of situation. In this case, she's relying on that journalist to understand exactly what the capabilities are of the government to hopefully, redact this information in a way that she doesn't get caught. Same way that the whistleblower in the Brokers Guild was hoping that those guys would understand exactly what they were up against. And in both cases, they failed. So finally, another subject near and dear to my heart. I have less of a problem with people publishing the information that they did than I do with the fact that they published the list of names and they basically put targets on 800 people's backs. I kind of understand exactly why they did it. To be honest, the actual release of the information would not have had the impact that it had without those names, without people being able to look down that spreadsheet and go and find the people that played in their neighbors, their cities, in their states, and be able to point a finger at them and call them a dirty, rotten cheater. It's happened to me several times, probably this week. So for that reason, masking the names, like if they just wiped them out, there's no way that was going to work. The problem with hashes is if they had gone through and even done MD5 sums or SHA-256 sums of all the names, same problem. Somebody that scraped the data has got a list of all the names of everybody that plays Ingress, and they would just run them through the same hashes. They'd identify them. I don't even think it would take hours to get that done. So I kind of like the idea, though, of if you're ever in this situation, you guys want to do this ethically. Bcrypt or I can never pronounce the other one. But anyway, password hashes, right? Password hashes where you get to actually set the difficulty of the password hash. You can actually set that really high and make it so that for them to test one name, for them to go through the entire list of 800 searching for Boy Plankton, it's going to take them a day, right? Nobody is going to set up 10,000 computers in order to go through every Ingress agent's name within a couple weeks, It means that the people that are actually high profile agents and stuff that play the game a lot, made a lot of enemies, they're going to get found pretty quick. But the low profile ones, they're going to stay hidden and anonymous for several weeks, months, years, tokens work. Tokens work for the same reason that tokens work in the credit card industry and stuff. With a token, you just provide another value, and you've got a lookup table somewhere. They could have provided that publicly, and they could have provided the lookup table to Niantic. So Niantic could have gone and looked up and seen exactly who it was that they had found. The problem with tokens is that tokens probably wouldn't have had the impact that they were looking for. And a lot of this goes back to marketing and PR campaigns and stuff. They really do want to make a big impact, have people talking about this and stuff. And tokens doesn't give you that bang. A little better than tokens for that reason is symmetric encryption. It could have done the same thing with AES 256. Just ripped all the way down the column, sent the password off to Niantic, and then published the list. Niantic could have gone and looked it up any day of the week, and nobody would have been the wiser. So, and I was a little worried about this. I talk pretty fast when I get nervous. So, anybody got any questions? Cool.